What do you do when someone you care about a lot is also the person who's hurting you the most? Relationships of all kinds can be tough, but especially so when you're dealing with drama and tension between you. And while avoiding conflict might feel easier, if your peace of mind is suffering, then something needs to change. This is something I've seen time and time again in my work as a counselor, and I've lived it personally. When you're emotionally tangled up in a relationship with someone and they matter to you, it can be hard to think clearly even when there are difficulties, let alone to know what to do next. So today, I'm going to walk you through a drama-free blueprint to work through relationship challenges with calm and clarity, and also to have a strong focus on protecting your mental health. So, let's talk about relationship challenges. Welcome to Let's Talk About Mental Health, the show that teaches you how to improve your mental health. I'm Jeremy Godwin, and this week I'm talking about how you can deal with difficult relationships in a way that ditches the drama and puts your peace of mind first, even when the situation may be hard to deal with. By the end of this episode, you'll have a clear understanding of what it means to navigate challenging relationships, why you need to be more strategic when you do, and how to work through issues in a way that protects your mental health, which I'll explain by stepping you through a 4-stage process that you can follow to tackle these types of relationships in a thoughtful way. So let's first get ourselves on the same page with some definitions, and let's talk about what are difficult relationships. What does it actually mean when we describe relationships as being difficult or challenging? Because not every disagreement or rough patch qualifies, and not every challenge is a red flag. So a difficult relationship is one where there's ongoing tension or stress or emotional discomfort, especially when those patterns repeat themselves frequently, or when they go unresolved, or when they start affecting your mental health, or all of the above for that matter. Now, it might be a romantic relationship where you're constantly walking on eggshells, or a friendship that started to feel very one-sided and maybe even draining. Or perhaps it's a family member who always seems to bring stress or conflict into your life, no matter how much you try and keep the peace with them. These kinds of relationships don't just impact how you feel in the moment, they can wear you down over time, mentally and emotionally, and also physically. They can make you anxious and emotionally reactive, or you can wind up feeling disconnected from yourself. And when you're stuck in that type of cycle for long enough, it can start to feel like it's completely normal for a relationship to be that way, even though it's most definitely not. And that's because a healthy relationship generally incorporates 3 key aspects. It's mutually respectful, it's mutually supportive, and it's mutually beneficial. Now, you'll notice I said mutually 3 times there, and I did so because it's really about recognizing that healthy relationships are a two-way street. The give and take may not always be perfectly balanced, and it doesn't have to be. It really doesn't matter so long as the intention is there for both people in the relationship to be respected and to be equals, regardless of whether it's romantic, platonic, or familial. Now, let's talk about drama, because that's often what turns a tough relationship into one that's truly damaging to your mental health. So, when I say drama, I'm not talking about people just expressing their emotions or having a bad day or just, even just a basic argument, because healthy emotional expression is important, and even in healthy relationships, you will still have arguments. What I'm talking about here is emotional chaos. It's the yelling, the passive-aggressive comments, the cold shoulders, the constant need to be right, the nastiness, the endless back and forth that never leads anywhere, the judgment. Drama is what happens when communication turns into conflict and when there are power struggles that are evident. And really, drama pulls you into a reactive state. It hijacks your nervous system. It makes everything feel like it's high stakes and emotionally loaded. And worst of all, it becomes a distraction from what actually matters in a relationship, which is respect and connection and understanding and peace of mind. Now, the idea of drama-free relationships, on the other hand, again, doesn't mean that you never argue. It also doesn't mean just pretending everything's fine or bottling things up. It means that you approach difficult situations calmly, clearly, and with boundaries, so that you can respond thoughtfully instead of just reacting emotionally. It means choosing curiosity over accusations, choosing stillness over spiraling, and choosing peace over performance. And if you're wondering how that connects to your mental health, well, the answer is directly. The more you get pulled into drama, the more your stress levels spike, the more your emotional regulation suffers, and the more your sense of self-worth erodes bit by bit. So, in short, healthy relationships support your mental well-being, whereas unhealthy ones drain it. Now let's talk about why navigating relationships mindfully matters. It can be really easy to downplay the impact of relationship challenges simply because we want to keep the peace or avoid arguments, or because we feel obligated or as though we have no choice. And that's especially the case when it comes to family. You might tell yourself, it's not that bad, or that's just how they are, or I'm probably overreacting, or the one I hear a lot, I'm sure other people have it a lot worse than I do. And meanwhile, while you're telling yourself all of that and downplaying your emotions and putting up with nonsense and shenanigans, the tension, the stress, and the emotional chaos are all quietly, constantly chipping away at your peace of mind. The truth is, your relationships with the people that you're closest to have an absolutely massive impact on your mental health, whether that's with a partner or close friends or a parent or sibling. Your closest relationships influence how safe you feel in the world. They affect your sense of self-worth. They shape how you process your emotions and how you relate to other people. And so when one of those relationships becomes difficult or tense, or when it becomes emotionally unpredictable, it doesn't just stay in that one little box, it bleeds out into every part of your life. You might start finding it hard to concentrate. You might feel constantly on edge, like you're waiting for the next emotional outburst, or awkward silence, or judgmental statement, probably because you are waiting for it. You might feel exhausted all the time, even if nothing dramatic is actually happening. And that's the key word here, drama. Because when relationships become emotionally chaotic, it's something that can have a very real, very harmful effect on your emotional and psychological well-being. Drama in a relationship often looks like big emotional swings. One minute everything's fine, and the next, you're in the middle of an argument that seems to come out of absolutely nowhere. It's a simple miscommunication that turns into a major conflict. It's conversations that go round and round in circles without ever actually getting anywhere. It's tension that never really gets resolved, and it's you carrying the emotional weight of it all, often quietly and very often alone. And when you're caught up in that kind of dynamic for long enough, it starts to feel like it's normal. You stop noticing just how much it's affecting you. You might even start believing that you're the problem, or that this is just what relationships are supposed to be like. But the thing is that relationships will always take effort. Yes, we're not going to pretend they don't, but they shouldn't make you feel like you're constantly in survival mode. A healthy relationship takes work, but it shouldn't be hard work. You shouldn't have to work this hard just to feel heard. You shouldn't have to tiptoe around someone or not bring up issues for fear of consequences. You shouldn't feel like keeping the peace means that you have to sacrifice your own mental well-being in the process. And that's why approaching these types of relationships in a more intentional and strategic way matters. Because your nervous system isn't built for ongoing emotional tension and non-stop drama-rama. When your brain is constantly scanning for the next disagreement or the next emotional curveball, you end up being stuck in a fight or flight state, even when things might seem fine on the surface. And that can show up in all sorts of ways, like anxiety, emotional burnout, physical fatigue, sleep issues, and even long-term health consequences. This is why I constantly bang on about protecting your peace of mind. And when I say that you need to protect your peace above all else, I'm not talking about living in denial or avoiding difficult conversations. I'm talking about choosing to step out of the emotional chaos so that you can respond to things with clarity instead of reacting from a place of fear or frustration. This matters because you matter. Your well-being matters. The quality of your relationships matters. And your peace of mind matters. And while your relationships are indeed a two-way street, the part that you're responsible for and the part that you can control is how you choose to show up in those relationships. You get to choose whether or not you're going to get involved in drama and match someone else's chaos, or instead, whether or not to stay grounded in your own sense of clarity. And if you're constantly in emotional survival mode, like constantly overthinking or doubting yourself, trying to fix everything or avoid conflict, then it's time to do things differently. Not for them, but for you. Because the longer you stay in that cycle of reactivity, the more it reinforces the idea that you don't deserve calm. That peace is something other people get, but not you. But you do. You do deserve calm. You deserve to feel safe and heard and emotionally steady. And all of that starts with how you choose to show up and how you respond when relationships become challenging. And that's why learning how to navigate challenging relationships without all the drama isn't just helpful. It's absolutely essential for the sake of your mental health and well-being. So then, how do you do all that? Well, I'm going to talk you through that right after this quick break. And welcome back. So now let's spend the rest of the episode exploring how to put all of this stuff into practice, and let's talk about how to work through challenging relationships. Okay, so earlier in this episode, I mentioned a 4-stage blueprint that I'm going to take you through. The 4 stages we're going to talk about are stage 1, get clear on what's really going on, which is all about self-awareness because clarity and calm are your best defenses against drama and nonsense. Stage 2, communicate calmly and clearly. Because drama thrives on confusion and blame, so being clear and honest serves to create a healthier foundation for your relationship. Then there's stage 3, which is recognize when the dynamic is harmful, because when drama and conflict keep on repeating, you need to be able to step back and see it for what it is. And then stage 4, choose peace over chaos. And this is very much where you take back your power. Okay, so let's explore stage 1 and how to get really clear on what's going on, beginning with start by being honest with yourself. Before you can change anything, you need to acknowledge what's actually going on. Are you constantly feeling drained, anxious, or unsettled after interactions with a specific person? Do you feel like you're not being heard, or like you're constantly having to walk on eggshells around them? Being completely honest with yourself is the first step, because drama thrives in confusion. And so you need to be truthful with yourself about what's going on and how it's affecting you. And when you can name what's happening clearly and calmly, that's when you can begin to take your power back, because you can see the truth of the situation much more clearly. And so that then leads to my next tip: consider what's going on underneath the surface. Drama distracts from the real problem. So you'll find that very often the thing you're fighting about isn't what you're actually upset about. So you end up fighting about this surface level stuff, which is actually being influenced by what goes on underneath the surface. Your emotions and your needs, and all of that runs much, much deeper. One of the most common things is that your needs aren't being met. And I'm talking about basic fundamental needs like respect, support, belonging, etc. So ask yourself, what's the core issue underneath all of this tension? What's really going on? Is it about respect? Is it about feeling dismissed? Do I have needs that aren't being met? Whatever it is, getting really clear about what's going on, what's actually going on, will help you to identify the root cause of the issue and to address it, instead of just arguing about surface level symptoms and then never actually resolving the big picture stuff. Next, recognize when you're being emotionally triggered. Sometimes what's happening in the present actually echoes wounds that we're carrying from our past. And that emotional reaction might not actually be about the other person or the specific situation that you're in at the moment, but it could be about something old being stirred up. Maybe it reminds you of a parent who made you feel small, or a past partner who invalidated your feelings. Naming those patterns helps you to separate the past from the present, so that you can choose your response, rather than just repeating old patterns on autopilot. Again, this is about self-awareness, which helps you to respond from now rather than reacting from then, as in responding based on the emotions that you're still carrying from the past. So now let's move on to stage 2, which is all about communicating calmly and clearly. And my first tip is regulate your emotions before you respond. Which is a very nice and professional way for me to say, think before you open your mouth and say something that might just dial up the drama. So just reacting while you're flooded with emotions is a direct route to drama city, and it does far more harm than good. Regardless of whether or not the other person is being dramatic or nasty or whatever, don't fight fire with fire, because all that does is create a larger fire. That's called science, people. Instead of just reacting, give yourself some space for your emotions to settle down a bit before you engage. Take a few seconds or more to pause and take a few deep breaths. Then label what you're feeling and why you feel the way you do before you even think about how you might respond. This is a really simple way to help your rational mind catch up with your emotions, and it stops you from making things into a much bigger mess. So just remind yourself, pause, breathe, what and why. If you need some time, take a walk or say to the other person, let me get back to you. And all of that can help you to respond from a place of clarity instead of from a place of chaos. Next, use calm, direct, and respectful communication. The more clarity you can bring into a difficult dynamic, the less room there is for confusion and emotional spirals. And so that means avoiding blame, because it only fuels defensiveness. And it also means choosing instead to focus on your needs. Now, you can do that by using I statements rather than attacking and blaming. Saying things like, I feel unheard when, or I need us to communicate more clearly, because what that does is it keeps blame out of it. And trust me, if you bring blame into the conversation, it's like chucking in a lit match on top of a bonfire that's been soaked in petrol. All right. So just take a step back and also remember to keep your tone steady. Drama escalates when things get loud or when they get passive aggressive. So either way, remaining calm is an excellent way to counter difficult situations. Next, choose the right moment. Look, timing matters, and you'll find that bringing up serious issues in the middle of an argument or when emotions are already high usually makes things much, much, much worse. It's that bonfire thing that I just said a few minutes ago. So instead of doing that, pick a neutral moment when you both have the mental space to talk calmly. This is not about avoidance, it's about strategy. A well-timed conversation is far more productive than one that's driven by emotional heat and urgency. Next, let go of needing to be right. In relationships that are dramatic and emotionally charged, it can be really easy to get caught up in the need to prove a point or win an argument. But here's the cold hard truth. Being right won't always bring resolution, and it certainly won't give you peace of mind. Let go of needing to convince someone of your version of events, because it really doesn't change anything. And it certainly doesn't change their mind if they're hell-bent on their own agenda. Focus instead on what you need, what you feel, and what you're going to do next, because that's where your power is. Next, stop trying to fix or rescue them. It's not your job to manage someone else's emotions, or heal their past, or talk them into treating you well. The more you overfunction in a relationship, the more resentment builds, and the more drama takes root. You can care about someone deeply and still recognize that their healing is not your responsibility. So, focus on what's within your control. Your boundaries, your choices, your communication, and your energy. Okay, next, set clear boundaries and stick to them. Boundaries aren't about shutting people out. They're about protecting what's healthy and sustainable for you. And they're how you teach other people what you will and will not accept. Whether it's limiting how often you speak to someone, refusing to engage in certain types of conversations, or clearly stating to another person what you will and won't tolerate, boundaries create a container for healthy connection. But they only work if you make them clear and if you honor them consistently, even when it's hard. So you need to set them and stick to them. Call it out if the person doesn't respect your boundaries, and recognize that repeated boundary breaches are a sign of willful disrespect and should be treated accordingly. All right, so now we're on to stage 3, which is about recognizing when the dynamic you have with someone is harmful. And so my first tip here is learn to recognize emotional manipulation. Recognizing manipulation is key to protecting your mental health. If someone regularly twists the truth, or makes you question your memory, or uses your compassion against you, that's not emotional closeness. It's control, and you need to tread carefully. Next, know when to pause a conversation. Sometimes the best thing you can do in a heated exchange is to stop. You don't need to stay in a conversation that's going nowhere or one that's causing you emotional harm. Say something like, I want to talk about this, but not in this way. Stepping away is not giving up. It's refusing to be pulled into unnecessary emotional escalation. So that brings us to stage 4, which involves choosing peace over chaos. And my first tip here and probably the single biggest point I'm going to be making throughout this entire episode today, is stop putting up with crap. Let's be blunt for a moment. Well, more blunt, since I'm already pretty blunt. If someone consistently treats you poorly by talking down to you, dismissing your needs, crossing your boundaries, or creating emotional chaos, then it's time to stop making excuses for their behavior. Now, that doesn't mean automatically cutting them off at the first sign of conflict. It means giving them the opportunity to treat you better by being honest with them about how their behavior is affecting you, and then setting clear boundaries and a clear understanding of what happens if that stuff continues, and then actually enforcing those boundaries. But what if they keep on ignoring those boundaries? If they keep choosing drama over respect, then you are absolutely allowed to choose your peace of mind over the relationship. You are not here to be someone's emotional punching bag. You can't control what other people do, but you can control how long you tolerate it for. And choosing to walk away from toxic dynamics isn't giving up. It's self-respect in action. So, stop putting up with crap. You deserve better, and it starts with how you choose to treat yourself. Next, rebuild your peace one choice at a time. Peace isn't a one-off decision. It's a daily choice and a daily practice. Protecting your peace means regularly checking in with yourself, honoring your limits, being kind to yourself, and refusing to get swept up in someone else's emotional storm. Even if you can't fix the relationship, you can take care of your own emotional well-being. Here's the thing. You don't have to keep getting dragged into drama. You don't have to sacrifice your peace of mind just to keep a connection with someone alive. And you most certainly don't have to accept emotional chaos as the price of love, or friendship, or family. Challenging relationships can be navigated with calm, clarity, and firm boundaries, but only if you choose to step out of the cycle and show up very, very differently. Because when it comes to navigating challenging relationships, what it all boils down to is this. You can't change them, but you can change how you choose to respond to them. And that changes everything. Now, what are you going to do with what you've learned today? Because calm doesn't just come from hoping other people will change. It comes from deciding that you will. So ask yourself, what's one thing you've been tolerating that's damaging your peace, and how can you respond differently? Maybe it's speaking up calmly. Maybe it's stepping away from an argument. Or maybe it's just being honest with yourself about what's no longer working. Whatever it is, choose one small thing and start today. Because protecting your peace starts with choosing not to participate in whatever's hurting you. The choice is yours, as it is with all things related to your well-being. So, what choice will you make today? Each week I like to finish up by sharing a quote about the week's topic, and I encourage you to take a few moments to really reflect on it and consider what it means to you. This week's quote is by an unknown author, and it is, "Being treated badly is a reflection of the other person's character, not yours." Let me repeat that. Being treated badly is a reflection of the other person's character, not yours. Alright, that's nearly it for this week. Sign up for my weekly newsletter at ltamh.com and support me on Patreon for early access to ad-free episodes. They're both linked in the description. Thank you very much for joining me today. Look after yourself and make a conscious effort to share positivity and kindness out into the world, because you get back what you put out. Take care and talk to you next time. You'll also find my episode about expressing yourself helpful. It's linked in the description. Next week, I'll be talking about emotional well-being. follow or subscribe to never miss an episode, and have a great week. Let's Talk About Mental Health is an independent program. Discover more at ltamh.com.